This is the third video of some reflections around what to do when you've faced a bit of a defeat or a bit of a knockdown. And the example I've been using is one from my own experience of having a panic attack when giving a public talk and how I came back from that. And I'm just sharing different techniques that are helpful in that. Today I want to talk about self-compassion. This is a really big one, and this is a theme that's sort of it's grown in recent years, and it's grown for me, and not because it's become big out there. I'm not blowing my own trumpet by saying this. I'm just pointing out that it's when you come to these conclusions by your own experience, and then you see other people are doing the same and researchers doing the same, you think, well, yeah, there's something really in this. And so I haven't taken this on as an idea because it's a popular idea, but through my own experience, I see the truth of it. And then I see that there's all sorts of research showing the importance of it as well. Self-compassion, far more important than things like self-esteem. That can be a bit diluted in the way the old sort of ideas of self-esteem from the 70s can be a bit diluted and even harmful. Self-compassion is a lot more important, I think. The essence of self-compassion is to think about how you would respond to a friend when they were in pain or when they faced a stumbling block or a failure, how you'd respond to them. Because generally the way we respond to other people, most of us respond to other people, at least in our better selves. I mean, there are some judgmental pricks out there, maybe sometimes you or I are judgmental pricks, but yeah, I think most people are decent and would respond relatively helpfully. At least I would try to. The thing about self-compassion is we're pretty good at sending that we're pretty good at sending that around the compass points, all the compass points except for one, and that's ourselves. So we point our compassion, our wise compassion at everybody else, but we don't direct it at ourselves. And that's what self-compassion is about. Think about the way you would respond to a loved one, to a friend, in trying to help them get a perspective on their own suffering or mistakes or failures. How would you talk to them about that? Well, why don't you bloody well start talking about that way to yourself? Here's a couple of jokes. The one I came across a week ago, and another one that's a bit older. I came across this Twitter post online, and it was a challenge. If you were offered $50,000, but on the condition that your worst enemy, that the person you hated most, was going to receive $100,000, would you take the 50? And the response was, why would I deny myself $150,000? So the joke being, I'm the person that I hate most, so I would get the 100 and the 50. The psychoanalyst Lacan, who I'm not particularly interested in, but for various reasons, but he has some good lines, said once that the Christian injunction to love thy neighbour as thyself must be ironic, because people hate themselves. So if we're meant to love our neighbours as we love ourselves, or we're meant to feel toward them as we feel toward ourselves, well, most people hate themselves, so that's not a good rule to follow. So yeah, bit of humour there, but people really are hard on themselves. They whip themselves, they beat themselves. We tend to do that to ourselves, and partly it's a kind of way of motivating ourselves, which sometimes is effective. Let's step away from the 70s self-esteem bullshit movement and recognise that sometimes we've got to be hard on ourselves. Sometimes we've got to be very frank with how things could go if we keep being so foolish or selfish or whatever. Sometimes we've got to be hard and we've got to use a stick. More often than not, we also need a carrot, or sometimes we don't want a stick, we just want a carrot as the right way to motivate ourselves. And I think fundamentally it's self-compassion that does the work. Here's another example I give to people. You want to be morally lucid. You want to hold yourself to account. Well, who are the people who can't hold themselves to account, who can't own up to what they've done, especially? Well, a big example is narcissists. And what's going on with narcissists? Well, for narcissists, they can't admit to any fault or flaw because it's too terrible for them to do that. For most of us who are healthy, if I've done something wrong, I can recognise that I'm bigger than that. So I can say, sorry, I did the wrong thing. I'm able to do that because I recognise it doesn't absolutely define me, and that I'm not either wonderful and perfect or absolute shit and should be destroyed. I recognise that I'm here, and that I'm good and that I'm bad at different times, and that's okay. I'm okay. And narcissists can't do that. Either they're perfect or they're the worst human being ever. So they can't admit to flaws because that will put them down here. If they had self-compassion, they could put themselves back here. They wouldn't have to be so arrogant because they wouldn't have such a terrible opinion at the same time as themselves, or wouldn't feel like either they're up here or they're here. If they had self-compassion, they can go, I'm an ordinary human being. And that's the thing. Self-compassion puts you in the context of being an ordinary human being. So it returns you to your common humanity. It makes you one of us. It's not the elite against the herd, that sort of arrogant notion. It's, I'm a human being, and that makes life much better. That makes my flaws much better. I'm human. In all that's wonderful about me and all that's terrible about me, I'm human. So I'm okay. I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of remaining in the tribe. So learn to turn self-compassion on yourself in the context of these mistakes. Say to yourself what you would honestly say to a friend. And what you would say to a friend is actually wise and reasonable, typically. If you're truthful with people, it'll be wise, and you'll be able to say, hey, if you keep doing this thing, it might go bad. You tell a friend about using drugs, abusing drugs, that if you keep doing that, man, shit's going to go bad. But you also say, you had this panic attack. Have you done well in the past? Yeah. Look, I know you. You can struggle sometimes, but you also do wonderfully at other times. You're quite a confident person. Don't worry about this. You feel like everybody was judging you. Really, they weren't. That's just in your own head. We weren't judging you, or other people wouldn't be judging you like you were. Most of what this was going inside you. Other people thought maybe you were just fumbling a bit or a bit quiet for that moment. People aren't going to condemn you for one mistake. People, and most decent people, aren't even going to condemn you for a mistake. You'll get another chance. You'll work on this over time. See the way you would talk to a friend. It's reasonable and it's wise and it's compassionate. Turn that way of talking on yourself. Rather than saying, I'm fucked, this is ruined, people will hate me. That's absolute nonsense. So stop beating yourself up as some sort of knee-jerk defense and go into a wise mode of having some compassion on yourself, and you'll get through this.